What is a violin fingerboard and how does it work? So a violin fingerboard is this black piece of wood here, which is underneath the strings, where we place the fingers in order to play notes. Okay, so we literally place our fingers on the board like this with the very tips of our fingers. I won't explain how to hold the neck in this video. If you want to know that, please look below to my video on where does the left thumb go, which explains how to use the left hand in the violin. So in this video, I'm assuming that you are pretty new to the violin, as if you want to know how the fingerboard works, then you probably are new to the violin. So I'm going to imagine that you don't know pretty much anything about music, and if that's still you, then continue watching this video. The violin fingerboard is very much like a guitar neck, but it doesn't have frets. So frets are the lines on the guitar neck which divide the notes up. And on a fretted instrument, it doesn't matter where you put your fingers between two frets, you'll still get the same pitch, which means the same note. However, on violin, we don't have frets here. So you actually have infinite numbers of notes that you can play on any string because there's no integers between the notes. So in mathematics, integer means the difference between 1 and 2 and 3. It means that there's a separation, whereas here we have a continuum of notes to choose from. Have a listen. So, with infinite possibilities to choose from, how do we know where to put our fingers? And that is a very good question. Now, if you are new to the violin, perhaps you already have a fingerboard sticker which you can put under the strings that maybe you bought from the internet or came with your violin. Now, this can be a handy training wheels sort of thing to have at the beginning, but you shouldn't become dependent on it because the goal is that you should be able to play the notes without looking at your fingers, and it should come down to muscle memory. So it's really good to build a mental map of how the violin neck works, which I'm going to try to teach you today. However, if you want to buy the fingerboard, I have linked it below. It is a sticker, so it may damage your instrument. So if you have a very, very expensive, beautiful instrument, then personally, I wouldn't want to put a sticker on it. But if you've just bought a beginner violin, then why not? Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about are tones and semitones. So what is a tone? A tone is the difference between two musical notes, and a semitone is half of that difference, like circle and semicircle. So a tone has a note in between usually, and a semitone has no note between. What do I mean by that? Let's start with the A string. So on the A string, the first note is A. Then if I'm to put my finger on the second note above that, which is B, it's about 1 inch above the end of the violin, which is called the nut. Now, between that, there's another note here, which is called B flat or A sharp. A to B is a tone. A to A sharp or B flat, which is the same note, is a semitone. So have a listen to those two notes again. So this is a tone, A to B. And now this is A to A sharp, a semitone. Okay, so a semitone is closer to the first note and a tone is further away. So how can I explain that? Think of a piano. Now, if you've ever looked at a piano, I'll place an example here for you to see now. You may already know that If you only play the white notes on the piano, you can get a C major scale, also known as A minor, but that's irrelevant today. The C major scale starts on the letter C and ends on the letter C, and you play every note, every white note between that, and the result that you get is a C major scale, which sounds like this. Okay, so a scale is like a musical ladder. We select certain notes to play, and the outcome is a set of notes that produces a certain mood or feeling. Now, a major scale is invariably there to create a cheerful or happy or bright mood. So most songs, when you feel this song sounds pretty happy, will be in some kind of major scale. Not across the board, but yeah. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you. That's a major scale. Happy birthday, dear me. It's not my birthday. Happy birthday to you. So, on the piano, if you start from C and play to the next C and only play the white notes, you get a major scale. Now, this is invariably what we teach in for the first part of learning violin, because it's the most common scale that most people have heard and is most common in pop music and classical music, and folk music from around the world is often in major scale. So most people can relate to what a major scale is and how it sounds and how it feels. So now we're going to talk about the tonality of a major scale, but quickly before we do so, I just want to do a quick quiz with you. So I want you to have a look down below at the piano and the imaginary piano. If you have a real one, you can go to that now. And I'm going to just test whether you understand the difference between tones and semitones. So if you look at the piano keyboard, you'll see that the white notes are C, D, E, F, G, A, B and C. And then the black notes, which are the little black keys, there's 5 black keys, are the sharps and the flats. So they are the notes between the notes, if you like. So between C and D, we have a note there called C sharp, which is also known as D flat. Now, a sharp looks a bit like a hashtag that you get on Instagram, and a flat looks like a letter B. So sharp means 1 semitone above C, and flat means 1 semitone below the note. So B flat means 1 semitone below B, which is identical in pitch in the system that the majority of us learn in, to a D flat. So C sharp and D flat are the same note on the piano. Okay. Now, if you look again to the next black key, this one here is D sharp / E flat, and it sits nicely between D and E. So D sharp means 1 semitone above D, and E flat means 1 semitone below E. Now, if you look at the next one, you'll see there E and F don't have a black note between them. Now, this is the same on every piano, and it's the same on every musical instrument. So there's no semitone between E and F, and so therefore E sharp would actually be F and F flat would be E. But we only use those names in certain scales, so you don't need to worry about that for now. There's no E sharp and there's no F flat, is all you need to know. So between F and G, we have F sharp and G flat. So F sharp is 1 semitone above F and G flat is 1 semitone below G. And then the next black note is G sharp / A flat. So as it goes, G sharp 1 semitone above and A flat 1 semitone below A, and so on. So we have one between A and B, A sharp and B flat. And then between B and C, like E and F, we have no semitone between that. So there's no B sharp and there's no C flat. Okay, so now I'm going to run a pop quiz with you. So I want you to answer the following questions, and I'll give you the answers as we go. So what's the difference between A and A sharp? Tone or semitone? It's a a semitone. What's the difference between G and A? That's a tone. And A to B? Yep, that's a full tone. And then B to C? Now, if you said tone, you would be incorrect because it's actually a semitone. So remember that we talked about B and C do not have a black note between them on the piano. Now, if you want to ask why, there's a whole wealth of internet information available on the construction of the musical scale. And I believe that it has something to do with Pythagoras, but I'm not an expert in that, but you can go away and Google that for yourself. For now, you just need to accept this is the tonality of a major scale. Okay, so what's the difference between B flat to C? It's a semitone. And the next one is E flat to D. So remember, you can look at the piano. E flat to D is a semitone. E flat is one semitone higher than a D. E to F sharp. So this is a tricky one. So E to F sharp you might think would be 1.5 tones or 3 semitones as it may be. However, remember there's no black note between E and F on the piano. So E to F sharp is 2 semitones or 1 tone. And finally, E to F. So going on the same principle, E and F have nothing between them, so are in fact 1 semitone apart. Now, don't worry if you didn't get all the answers right, as long as you understand that when we play the violin, we're going to be following the same tonality of the major scale as you see here on the piano with the C major scale. Now, what do I mean by tonality of the major scale? What I mean is the pattern of the spaces between the notes. So in this case, for major scale, we use the pattern tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. So looking back at the piano, the difference between C and D is a tone. Yep, D to E is a tone. And then E to F is a semitone, no black note there between them. And then F to G is a tone. G to A is a tone. A to B is a tone, and B to C is a semitone. So we have tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Now, if we follow that pattern from the letter A, I wonder if you can figure out what the notes of the A major scale are, okay? So you can have a look again at a piano. So I'm going to bring up a 2-octave piano below so you can see the notes on the piano. So we've got here A. The first note of the scale has to be 1 tone above, because remember, tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone to get the sound of a major scale. So I'm just going to play you what an A major scale sounds like. Okay, so A to B is in fact the first note because it's 1 tone. So A to B. Remember, we have a semitone between A and B, which is B flat or A sharp. So our second note is indeed B. So remember, we're going to go tone, tone, semitone, tone, tone, semitone. So you can fill in the gaps now. Maybe write this out on a book yourself and see if you can get what the rest of the notes are in the A major scale. So A to B is the first one, and then after that we jump a tone from B to, have a look at the piano, B to C sharp, because remember there's no black note between B and C, so a tone from B to C sharp is the correct answer. All we have between B and C sharp is C. Now, C sharp, what is semitone above C sharp? So if you look at your piano again, C sharp is a black note, so the next white note above that, which is D, is your semitone above that. Okay, so we've got A, B, C sharp and D now as our notes of the A major scale. Now between D, the next note, the fourth and the fifth note, we've got a tone. So after D, we go up a tone from D. So skip over D sharp, that's a semitone, and then you can land on E, simple. A tone from E is F sharp, why? Because remember, we don't have any notes between E and F. So 2 semitones above E, or 1 tone, is F sharp. And then we go from F sharp up another tone to G sharp. And then after that, one more semitone to A. So tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone should give you the notes of the A major scale. So we've got A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. Okay, now we're going to play those notes on the violin fingerboard. All right. So we're going to start on the A string, and I'm going to show you how the notes work. So when we play a semitone, the notes, the fingers should be touching. So if I put my first finger here, a semitone above that is right next to it. There's no space between the fingers. However, if we play a full tone, then there should be a finger's width distance between the two fingers. Now, as we get up the violin neck, these distances get slightly smaller depending which position that we're in. What do I mean by position? So if you've just started learning the violin, then you'll be playing in first position, which is right at the bottom of the neck. And that's the G major scale in first position. Now, if I was to play in second position, I move the first finger up to where the second finger was. Here. Replace it and start from there. Third position, I put my first finger where the third finger was in first position, which was a C. Fourth position, starting where the fourth finger would be. Fifth. Sixth. And so on. You can go right up the neck and keep going. I'm not sure what the highest position is because it all gets a bit uncomfortable at the top and I don't tend to deal with it, but it's 12th or 13th position, I believe, maybe something like that. But I tend to go to sort of 8th and 9th, and then that's enough for me. After that, it sounds a bit scratchy and rubbish. So, in first position, today is all we're going to deal with, okay? So you don't need to worry about playing up the neck. But just know that as you go up the neck, that the distances between the fingers get smaller. So the first finger usually goes 1 inch above the end of the fingerboard to get the first note. So if we're in an A major scale starting on A, we want to place it roughly 1 inch from the end. However, if we were to play right up the neck, the same note, so I'm going to play on the G string just to show you. The distance between the notes there is much smaller than, we've got a whole inch there, and here it's more like a centimetre. Okay, so if you understand that principle, we'll go forward. So if you look at a fingerboard sticker, when you buy one, if you buy one, you'll notice that this pattern on the fingerboard is laid out like that as well. The gaps get smaller as you get further up the neck. Okay, so A to B, as we know, is a tone. So we're going to do roughly 1 inch from the end of the neck. And then A, B to C sharp is a tone. So another roughly 1 inch. Let me come around this side and show you from here. That's better. And then the next bit, because remember, tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone, tone, tone, semitone, C sharp to D. Can you see there? My fingers are touching. And then I go up either to the fourth finger, which is a tone. Next, can you see there that the difference between the first and the second finger and the third and the fourth is just slightly smaller? Okay, just slightly. can also skip the fourth finger and go to open E. The E to F sharp, a whole tone there. So again, looking at it from this angle. Then a whole tone, and then a semitone. Notice for this scale, the finger pattern is the same for each string, so this is very easy. You've got a gap between the end of the neck and the first finger, and a gap between the first and the second, and then no gap between the second and the third. Okay, so with that, you should be able to play A major scale. Now I'm going to draw a finger map here to show you where I put my fingers for the A major scale, so that you yourself can also see where to put the fingers if you can't quite figure it out from my explanation so far. When I teach scales to beginners, I tend to start with a finger map for each scale, which uses a grid, and lined paper is really good for this. So I'm going to show you one that I made earlier, which I thought might be useful to show you the names of the notes on the violin. So the Violin Fingerboard, this is a pretty messy one, but I just drew it as a sketch. There, I draw a fingerboard map. So here I'm showing every semitone available in first position. So you may want to screenshot that if you think it's helpful to you, but to be honest, it's too busy for me. I like to just select the notes that I need for the scale and then draw a finger map grid. So for the A major scale one, I've just done you one. And then if you were to then come to me and learn different scales, I'd do you a different finger map for each scale. And ordinarily your teacher should be able to do that, especially if you do buy the fingerboard map from Amazon. It's a little bit laid out like this, and it can be a little bit difficult to read because there's too much information on there. So for me personally, I actually like to use white tape lines, very much like in the fingerboard map that I just showed to you, which I stick onto the violin. They don't damage the neck, and you can buy any sticker, either little circle stickers, but I like to use lines because they're more accurate. I get address labels, which I buy from the stationer, and then I cut them into strips, and then I place them where the notes are. And to find those notes, I tend to use the tuner just to be absolutely sure when I'm first working with a student. It's pretty hard to do this as a beginner, and if you are a parent supervising a youngster, even it's almost impossible to do this when you don't know what you're doing, because you have to be very accurate. So I would advise either buy the fingerboard map to start with if you don't have a teacher, and that will do, or you can go to a teacher and ask them to fit it on for you. But to be honest with you, it's not that easy to place them, but I'm going to leave a picture here of where I personally like to put my tape when I'm first teaching. These are usually only good for a while, because once you change the scale, then you need to have sort of the fingers in different places. So it works very well for A major, for example, if you only use one octave, but when you do the second octave of A major, you need different positions. So these are lines that I put on the violin. You can't just play where those fingers points are and get a good scale. You have to kind of use them as points to relate to, okay? So there are 4 fingers on the violin, 1, 2, 3, and 4 when we're using the left hand. So I put 4 strips, and basically what I do then is I say either play first finger, or I say high first finger or low first finger, which means 1 semitone above or 1 semitone below. Or, you know, with second finger, so on the second piece of tape, then I will say second finger but low second finger, or high second finger, and same with third and fourth, in order to give the student an idea of whether they should put the finger on the tape itself or the sticker, or between the 2 stickers, and they normally get an understanding then. If you are interested in booking an online lesson, I can help you to fit these stickers online. However, I would recommend going to somebody in person. It's much easier, they can do it for you themselves. And I'll link to below where you can buy the particular address labels that I like to use. I like to make them as thin as possible, but please bear in mind, when you play, your finger grease will get on them and they'll move around. So you actually need to replace them quite frequently. You know, once every few months usually, because they just start to fall off. And I would say that you shouldn't keep them on for too long. Ideally, a student will take them off, maybe even after the first couple of months of playing, and then start to use their muscle memory. However, with younger kids, they tend to be less up for doing that, or anyone who's a little bit anxious or slower to learn. I will be easy with, but if you become overly dependent on a visual aid for where to put your fingers, then it can be very difficult to actually ever really learn where to put the fingers. So you should try to use your ears to tell whether you're in tune as quickly as possible, rather than your eyes. And remember, when you're playing, you're not going to be able to look at the fingerboard from above with a bird's eye view. You're always going to have a weird angle of it. So it's better you have a mental map and that you understand how that works. Now, if you want to learn about where to put the fingers in the higher positions, this is not the video for you. It gets a little bit more complicated then, and we teachers tend to deliver that information piecemeal because it can be too much information to take in all at once in the first lesson. So that's about everything I have to share on the violin fingerboard for a beginner. And if you have any more questions or you want to book an online lesson with me, you can drop me an email on theviolincoach@gmail.com, or you can drop your questions in the comments and I'll try to get back to you. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Sawadee ka from Thailand.